Before I introduce our next speaker, I'd like NRA President David Keene to join me on stage. As the Executive Director of NRA ILA, one of the greatest honors I have is to present the Harlan B. Carter Award for Legislative Achievement. This is the highest honor ILA bestows. This award is given to individuals who have shown outstanding leadership and achievement on behalf of NRA members and gun owners. This year's recipient has met those standards time and time again. He's gone all in and fought for our Second Amendment rights as a legislator and now as governor. We all watched a year ago as he took on the biggest political fight in the country. He stood strong in the face of protests, sit-ins, and millions of dollars in attack ads. Most politicians facing this kind of controversy would have tucked tail and run, but not this man. Even as he faced the threat of a recall election, he worked with the legislature to pass right to carry. The day he signed this landmark legislation into law, it was a huge victory for every American gun owner. And after he secured our right to carry, he signed Castle Doctrine legislation into law to protect our fundamental right to self-defense. This year's Harlan Carter Award recipient is a perfect example of why we work to elect the right men and women to every office in every state. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to this year's recipient of the Harlan B. Carter Award, the Governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker.
We're with you too. We love it. Well, thank you. First off, I just want to say thanks, not just for this tremendous award, but I want to say thank you. I've talked to a number of folks on the way in. Tonette and I, my beautiful wife and our two sons, Matt and Alex, get asked all the time, how do you put up with it? Chris talked a little bit about it, all the protests, heck, not just in the Capitol, but in front of our home. We had thousands of people bust in the past year. My kids were targeted on Facebook. We've had all sorts of grief, but I got to tell you, for every one person like that, there's tenfold people out there who come up to me and say, Governor, we're praying for you and your family, and a number of people told me that today, and I appreciate it, and I want to thank you for that. Yeah, I want to thank, as all the speakers have, but I particularly want to thank Chris and Dave and Wayne and the whole, actually Wayne and David. David directly has connection to Wisconsin with Wisconsin roots. Wayne's got Wisconsin in-laws. It's part of this great cheesehead revolution with Reince Priebus and Paul Ryan and a bunch of the rest of us. Sooner or later, the cheeseheads are going to take over the world. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you. You've got a great team, a great board, but most importantly, you've got great members, and I'm proud to be one myself. And I just want to spend just a minute or two telling you about a couple things we're doing in Wisconsin, a couple things we're fighting to protect. As Chris mentioned, we're fighting first and foremost to protect in our state our personal security, our safety, the public safety of our state. And we knew after years of trying and with failed attempts in the past, because we had a governor and legislature who didn't understand the value of a Personal Protection Act, I was pleased last past year as governor to sign into law, ultimately sign law once. We were a little late getting there, but as always, we're ahead of Illinois, so we're still ahead of the curve. We were able to sign into law the Personal Protection Act, concealed carry in the state of Wisconsin in an aggressive form so that the people of our state could protect themselves. Along with that, so that law-abiding citizens in the state of Wisconsin could protect themselves against those who are not law-abiding. Let's define the difference there. And along the way, we signed into law the Castle Doctrine because in our state, we want to make sure you can not only protect your home and your property, but most importantly, you can protect your family and your loved ones from those who would come in to break the law in your own home. And we signed that into law as well. In our state, in addition to protecting our public safety, we've been fighting this past year to protect our heritage as well. I know in Wisconsin, like a lot of states across this country, hunting, fishing, and trapping is a key part of our state's heritage. It's why I'm proud not just to be here as an NRA member, but to have a rifle and a shotgun and even a bow, and to have two boys, Matt and Alex, who I'm proud to pass that tradition on to as well. And in the past year, we've worked hard to make sure we protect that heritage, to do more to promote hunting in our state, to promote respect for hunting, and to make sure that we've got a good hunt in all sorts of different areas in our state, to make sure that our Natural Resources Board, that we actually have people on it who have active licenses in hunting, fishing, and trapping in our state. I was proud the other day just to sign a law that gave us the right to hunt wolves in our state, because we've said for years to the federal government, there's a lot more wolves in our state and a lot of other states than the federal government thought there were. And we've aggressively worked to make sure we've got a better hunt and a more enjoyable hunt and a good harvest when it comes to our deer population in the state. In fact, we ended a program called Earn a Buck, which was a failure in the past. And I appointed Dr. James Kroll, many of you know him as the deer doctor, to be our deer trustee, to make sure we could do more to improve the hunt, not just for those of us hunting today, but particularly to attract new young people and others into hunting, to carry on that tradition and heritage in our state, just like so many of you are doing across the country. But most importantly, over the past year and more so looking ahead to the future, we're fighting to protect something more important than just public safety and our heritage. We're fighting to protect our freedoms. And that's a battle that all of us should be a part of, not just those of us in Wisconsin. You see, I think the battle we're facing in Wisconsin is very similar to the battle we're facing across this country. And there's a clear choice. Our opponents believe that the success in government is determined by how many people are dependent on government programs. I think all of you here believe that success in government isn't on how many people are dependent on government programs. It's just the other way around. Success in government is dependent on how many people are free of dependency on government programs. And that's why I become a target. And that's why I'm asking for your help. You know, Chris talked about it. We have a recall election, if you can imagine or not. June 5th of this year, even though I kept every one of my promises, even though I helped the people of Wisconsin create more private sector jobs than were there when I started, even though we balanced a $3.6 billion budget without raising taxes and without massive layoffs, and even though we ultimately put in place a government that better serves the people we were elected to serve, keeping all of those promises, I'll be only the third governor in American history facing a recall election on June the 5th of this year. Why is that? Well, the advocates for big government view me as a threat. They want to take me out, and they want to take me out before anybody else across America dares take them on when it comes to big government. That's why we need your help. Join us at scottwalker.org, because we can carry that message forward. Now, some of you may say, well, that's nice in Wisconsin. There's a number of people here from Wisconsin, but what does that matter across the country? Well, I'll tell you why this is important. You see, our opponents are targeting me because I stand in the way of getting their hands on their money and their power. And instead, what I look at instead of money and power is I look at ways to provide greater freedom and prosperity for our people. That's what this is all about. And they feel threatened because they're worried it might actually happen elsewhere across the country, and lo and behold, it might actually happen in Washington. Well, I'm an optimist, and I believe on June 5th of this year, with your help, we're going to prevail. And when we do, it's not just about freedom and prosperity, it's ultimately about courage, because when we prevail, it will send a powerful message, not just in my state house, but in state houses all across America, and most importantly, in our nation's capital, where Lord knows we need more courage, that if people stand up and do what they say, if they mean what they say and say what they mean, that ultimately there'll be people standing up with them to help them move forward. That's what this is all about. And Lord help us if somehow we fail. If somehow we fail on June 5th, I believe it sets aside courage in American politics anywhere in this country. It sets us back at least a decade, if not a generation. That is why we must not fail. Now, I believe we won't fail, and I'll tell you why. Because I believe failure is not an option in America. I believe in our country, not just in my state of Wisconsin, but I believe all across America that what makes us great, what's about our DNA, is something that allows us to focus in on greater freedom and prosperity for our people. And I'll tell you why. I grew up in a small town. My dad was a preacher. we didn't have a lot of money. In fact, our idea of a good vacation was how long we could jump in the station wagon and travel for a day and find our way back. So I didn't get to go to places like Washington or Philadelphia. But last September, Tonette and I had the chance to speak at a Governors Association meeting in Philadelphia. And so being a kid, I loved growing up. I loved history, and I loved our founders. In fact, for people like Washington and Jefferson and Madison and Franklin, to me, they were like superheroes. They were like bigger than life. And so when we went to Philadelphia, I got up early in the morning. We went over to the National Park Service. We went and saw the Liberty Bell, but most impressively, we went to Independence Hall. And for any of you who've been there, it's actually smaller than the stages right up here. And I stood up there that morning and I looked out, and it dawned on me, looking at those chairs and desk chairs just like the ones you're all sitting in here right now. And you look at the chair at the front and the top where you see the chair that George Washington sat in with the half-rising sun, and it just makes you realize these were ordinary people like all of us here this afternoon. Ordinary people who did something quite extraordinary. You see, they didn't just risk their political careers. Heck, they didn't even just risk their businesses. They risked their lives. It was Ben Franklin that appropriately said, if we don't hang together, surely we'll hang separately. These were people who were willing to lay it on the line for the freedoms we hold dear today. Too many of our fellow citizens take for granted. They were laying it on the line. In moments like that, in places like that, it reminds me in the fight that we have, not just between now and June 5th, but between now and November of this year, that will prevail. And the reason I believe that is because in moments like that, it reminds me that what has made this country great, in moments of crisis, be it economic or fiscal, be it military or spiritual, what has made America exceptional, arguably the greatest nation in the history of the world, what has made our country so great has been in times of crisis. We've had men and women of courage who've been willing to stand up and think more about the future of their children and their grandchildren than they thought about their own political futures. And along the way, there have been men and women with them who've been willing to stand up and support them and see them forward. This afternoon, I asked for your help because I asked this to be a call to action. A call to action not just between now and June in Wisconsin, but a call to action all across America. Let this be this moment in time. Let this be the moment when we can tell our children and our grandchildren, we stood up, we stood for freedom and prosperity, and in doing so, we ensured a greater future for the next generation. Let this be that time. Thank you so much for this award. Thank you for being here, and God bless each and every one of you.